Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Today, I think I'm going to call Babylon Falls even further. This is the book of Revelation. This is Be With Me, a podcast. This is episode 63 of 7-minute bites out of Revelation. Today, we're in Revelation chapter 18. We're going to start in verse 4. We've been looking at Babylon. Now, Babylon is a city in Iraq, or it is a symbol of a religious system that leaves God out, and it's a symbol of a heart system that leaves God out, and therefore it leaves a behavior system that leaves God out. So this religious and commercial system that leaves God out has to fall, and God is heading towards ultimate victory of being enthroned, and all that fails to recognize him and worship him is going to fall, of course. And we see that at least now in Babylon. So here it is, chapter 18, verse 4. I'm going to do this verse by verse today. Verse 4, I heard another voice from heaven. This is probably the voice of God. Then I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins, lest you share in her plagues. So another voice from heaven cries out. Yesterday, an angel was crying out. I think this is the voice of the Lord, because then he identifies believers as my people. So this is a call to believers here again, with agency again. Don't take part in this. So we see the Lord's protection, his identification, his instruction to those who are his, saying, hey, this judgment is not for you. And personally avoid the enticements of sin and the consequences here of this judgment. So God is active in this towards believers. Verse 5, for her sins, Babylon's sins, are heaped high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. So here's the problem. Her sins are continuing. She isn't repenting. She has crossed the line of God's patience and just, perfect, and appropriate God response is here. Her sins are piled high to heaven, and no, God has not fallen off the thrones, and he's going to fix this with his judgment. Verse 6, pay her back as she herself has paid back others, and repay her double for her deeds. Mix a double portion for her cup that she has mixed. So in verse 6 here, we see we see at least part of the way that he's fixing this. And he has been using another evil entity, that is the beast and the followers of the beasts. So he's using God's enemies to pay her back. So remember, this evil house that has up to this point been perfectly united, now it's divided, and they're starting to turn on themselves. And they are used to punish her fully, and ultimately no one pulls a fast one on God. No one's above his law except those that Jesus helps. So judgment isn't coming for her. Judgment has come. It's here. It's happening, and it is now. Well, here's the problem with her. Verse 7, as she glorified herself and lived in luxury, so give her a like measure of torment and mourning. Since in her heart she says, and listen to this, this is her glorifying herself. I sit as a queen. I am no widow, and mourning I shall never see. Of course, that's wrong. So verse 7, we see this pride of superiority and glorified self-sufficiency. I'm a queen. I live in luxury. Basically, there's no room of God. And she has this self-deception saying, hey, nothing bad's ever going to happen to me. But it does. Here it is. Verse 8, for this reason her plagues will come in a single day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be burned up with fire, for mighty is the Lord who has judged her. So we learned some things about her, and we learned some things about the Lord. Well, judgment is sure. Judgment is final. Judgment is sudden. At least it seems so to us. Probably if we put on the thinking cap of God, it reeks of his patience and is waiting to the last moment maybe. And he uses unexpected means to punish Babylon. He uses an earthquake, and he uses his enemies. Back in chapter 17, he said, the 10 horns that you saw, these worldly powers, and the beast will hate the prostitute. The prostitute is also known as this city Babylon. The woman, the prostitute, Babylon, they're all synonyms. They will make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. So here, God's enemies Now in chapter 18, God's enemies are now God's instruments. And God's enemies are now her, Babylon, the prostitute, are her enemies. And then the final line of verse 8, mighty is the Lord who has judged her. Okay, then we're going to hear about what happens. How do the ones who are under her spell respond? Verse 9, let me just start with that. And the kings of the earth who committed sexual immorality and lived in luxury with her will weep and wail over her when they see the smoke of her burning. They will stand far off in fear of her torment and say, alas, alas, you great city, you mighty city Babylon, for in a single hour your judgment has come. All right, so let me say some favorites today. I know it's funny to say, hey, this passage touched me, and it's funny to say this in this scary book. And parts are indeed of Revelation are scary. But ultimately, God is in control. You hear God saying over and over again, I've got this. I'm sovereign, and I am finishing well. So God is still strong. He still sees his people in this. He's still instructing his people. He's still protecting his people. And at least for people, humanity, they still have agency here now in chapter 18. And creatively, he's using the enemies of God, now turns as agents of God to enact her perfect and just and painful and in some ways horrible judgment. So Babylon, at this point in time, does not have agency. She is now punished. She's crossed this line. Her problem is pride, of course. What else? A heart that leaves no room for God, and of course behaviors that leave no room for God. So other favorites from today is that judgment is coming. Let's not forget that. Babylon, unfortunately, faces her judgment alone, and so will we unless we have an advocate, a helper, a substitute. And we all, at a similar moment of this sudden final judgment, we should be able to say, hey, not only am I with Jesus, but I've been with Jesus. I've been previously responding to his Holy Spirit, walking with him. So let's let God not only say, hey, I know you, I've been knowing you for many years. So be with me is the great call of this podcast. The Ancient of Days is calling out from his throne for you today, believers and not yet believers. Let's answer the call. Thanks for listening.